Okay, hi everybody. So I just started the recording, and what I think I'm going to do, just to keep the lines quiet, is I'm going to put everybody on mute except for Tanya and myself. This is Gracie speaking right now. And then, hold on one second, let me just. All right, and if you do want to unmute yourself at any point in this call, then please do. Of course, this is always a conversation more than a lecture, and so you can just push *6 to unmute yourself. I'm going to say that again. You can just push *6 to unmute yourself at any point in the call. And so, hi, welcome everybody. This is Gracie, and I know we have. I'm here today with Tanya, Mark, and we're sharing this call because we met in Mexico. We're part of the same health coaching and program. And during our talks in Mexico, we realized that we both really believe the same things, and we were just coming at them from slightly different perspectives because we have different backgrounds. So my background is in teaching yoga. I've been teaching yoga in the Washington, D.C. area for 5 years, and I've been doing Thai massage for about that amount of time too, and I've been studying Ayurveda for a little over 2 years. And my knowledge is really in the Eastern traditions, and yet I live in the West. So my expertise is taking Eastern traditions and translating them into language that, one, we can understand in the West, and then also translating them into practices that we can use here in our own lives. Because knowledge is just knowledge, but when knowledge can turn into practice, that's when it gets to be pretty life-changing and awesome. And I know that that everyone on the call is feeling the effects of that. And I'm going to introduce Tanya in a second, but I just so everyone on the call understands the structure too, that Tanya works out in, she works in the Jackson Hole area, but she has clients all over the country the same way that I work in the Washington, D.C. area, but I have people taking the class from all over the country. And so we're coming together for like one awesome powwow of women to learn about nutrition and sugar cravings and the emotional component behind it and physical component behind it. So Tanya and I, we had a little chat this weekend where we just started to suss out our ideas, and we were really inspired by the conversation we were having. So we're both really excited to share it with you. So I just want to, since I'm the one who initiated and asked Tanya to lend her time, I'm going to introduce Tanya here. And so this, everyone welcome Tanya Mark, and her website is tanyamark.com, and it's TanyaMark.com if you want to check her out as we're talking. She's actually originally from Maryland in Washington, D.C. area, and former resident of Washington, D.C., and now she lives in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. She's an expert in exercise and mind-body nutrition. She's a licensed massage therapist, certified in sports and nutrition and functional movement, personal trainer, studied at the Nutrition Therapy Institute in Denver, and she loves to focus on the practical aspects of eating well without being a nutrition neurotic. And she writes, being a perfect eater is just plain no fun and definitely unsustainable. I strive to teach a healthy relationship with food where there is no perfection, nor good or bad foods. Instead, I focus on having real, nourishing foods on my plate most of the time. Right now she's currently studying with the Institute of Psychology for the Psychology of Eating out in Boulder, Colorado, to become a professional eating psychology coach. And I think this is just so fascinating to really get the perspective that Tanya is gaining from that right now. And then when her program that she does private and group coaching, and the program that she is welcoming her members in today, it's called the Empowered Women's Wellness Club. And she helps women fit into their favorite pair of jeans and live more vibrantly by exploring their relationship to food, exercise, and stress. And for our group today, I teach some 10-week classes, and we just recently took 2 groups of women from the 10-week classes who wanted to go on and deepen their study and to a program called Partners in Wellness. And there's 14 of us, and it's a 6-month-long journey that we're taking together to really dive deeply into our our practices and our purpose and what it is to evolve and go deeper into our relationship with ourselves within a community. So I'm very excited to have you here, Tanya, and I'd love to just turn things over to you and let you get the conversation started. And again, if you're just joining here, we have about 16 people on the line right now. And if at any point you want to talk, you're muted, you can just unmute yourself by pushing *6. And there'll be time later for questions, but if anything you're not understanding, you can just go ahead and unmute the line. So turn it over to you, Tanya. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for that super awesome introduction, Gracie. I'm really super excited to be on the call with you. And as you had discussed when we chatted initially about this subject, sugar cravings, it was so fun to come together and see our unique perspectives. And they're really unique, but they came together so well. So I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. And one of the things that Gracie and I had discussed was that, wow, sugar cravings. We both have had our personal, challenges with them. And one of mine in particular was being out of integrity as a personal trainer. Hey, as a personal trainer, I'm working with clients who want to look great and feel great. But then there I was eating purple cupcakes. So did you hear that? I was eating purple cupcakes. So I think this is a great subject because I think it's a hot topic. We're always hearing about it in the news. We're seeing the latest 21-day sugar detox. There's books on how to get rid of sugar cravings. And so I'm really excited to share what I've learned through my own personal journey in exploration with where I was at some point with the purple cupcakes, and I'll elaborate on that more here in a second, and what I learned that I want to share with you today. So kind of the top three things that kind of jumped to my head was, okay, what did I learn about myself? I was trapped in this kind of sugar craving HELL. And why? Well, what I learned was, number one, I wasn't eating complete meals. And what I mean by that was that they weren't full of nutrients, protein, high-quality fats, and high-quality carbohydrates. So that was number one, and Gracie and I can talk about this more. The second one was I didn't really have much rhythm to my eating. So in a nutshell, especially when I was working as a trainer, working for somebody else, I'd have my breakfast, and then I'd go to work, and then there really wouldn't be time to eat. That's a big hot topic, right? Time. A lot of us are like, oh, I just don't have enough time. And so I ended up kind of blowing through lunch and then maybe just snacking on something. And so I was getting out of rhythm with my breakfast, lunch, and dinner cycle. And then kind of the third thing that we can touch upon is I found that I was fighting the sugar cravings and I was trying to restrict. And what I learned about myself is that I was going about this whole sugar cravings challenge the wrong way. So sugar isn't evil, right? Really what's happening in 2015 is that sugar's in everything these days. It's in salad dressings. It's in your ketchup. It could be added to like a low-fat or non-fat yogurt. And so it's sneaking its way in all kinds of processed foods. So that's foods that are made in a factory. And so the numbers of how many sugars that we're getting into our daily diet has just gotten really big. The number's really grown. So what are those numbers really supposed to look like? Well, women are supposed to limit, kind of give you an idea, 24 grams of sugar. And men, lucky guys, they get 36. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, in 1 teaspoon of sugar, that's 4 grams. And the average American these days is probably eating, I don't know, let's see, I'd probably say it's probably around 82 grams. And that's just like norm, day in, day out.
Wow. so much. Yeah, but you're saying, it's so easy to do it. And my thought when I was listening to you was like, wow, and we get it so early on too. But like just so many of the foods that I ate growing up and that I see kids eating today growing up are processed, So it's like if that's your chemical intake, it seems like it happens so early. It's so much harder to break as life goes on when we're used to having sugar. And I know that when I was younger, like sugar was used for rewards all the time. Like when you did something well, you got like the sweet taste. So there's so much associated with that taste too.
Yeah. No, I totally remember growing up, especially in high school too. I don't know. There was a big draw to sugar when I was in high school. But that was also, when I was in high school, that was the era of low fat. So like the Snackwell cookies, do you know what I'm talking about, Gracie?
That's immediately what I thought of when you said that. I was like, oh, those like non-fat little air pockets of just sugar.
Right. And so you totally hit the nail on the head. It's like, well, they took all the fat out, and then they had to make it taste good. So what'd they do? They put sugar in it. And then what happened? And then how many of those cookies did you eat?
Yeah. I remember that time. It was such a cheap carbohydrate friendly time. Like you could do no wrong with pasta. And it's so funny how eating trends can really change. And now it's, all about the protein and the good fats, and we're starting to get a little bit more sense into us. But it was really sold to us during that time that carbohydrates were fine and fat was the enemy.
Yeah. So then that can kind of take me to one of the number one thing that I wasn't doing when I was constantly craving carbohydrates and sugars, because they're the same. When you eat a piece of bread or a bagel or pasta or crackers or a Three Musketeers bar, whatever it is, in the body, it's all metabolized the same. Your body sees that as sugar. So it's kind of good that we define that a little bit. And so what I learned about myself was that I wasn't eating complete meals, nutrient-dense meals, and that my blood sugar wasn't stable. So basically, what that means is when we have stable blood sugar levels, that's going to keep us feeling kind of really like our moods are really balanced. So you're not going to have really highs, super, super highs and super, super lows, like those mood swings. You're going to have this nice balanced kind of mood throughout the day. And so I'd say eating complete meals, and what I mean by that is, like you had touched upon that, Gracie, how, back when I was growing up, it was all about the carbohydrates and low fat. And now really the nutrition world has switched to, hey, we need some protein in there. We need some healthy fats. But we also do need carbohydrates too. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's more consciousness around that right now too, that not all carbohydrates are created equal, and not all sugars are created equal either.
Good point. Yeah, right. So, everybody's like, oh, I don't eat carbs. And I'm like, okay, well, vegetables are carbs and fruit are carbs, and those are awesome forms of nutrient-dense foods, right? And same as whole grains, right? And so, and when we say whole grains, what are we talking about, Gracie? We're talking about the actual grain, not something that's processed into like a flour product made with the grain.
Something that has the fiber that's in there too.
Yeah. So eating a complete meal, what I like to teach is it's kind of silly, Gracie, but I call it eating in creating your meals around what I call the campfire meal principle. So it's kind of silly. And so the campfire meal is basically thinking when you build your breakfast, you build your lunch, you build your dinner, where's the fat, healthy fat, where's your quality protein, and where's your quality carbohydrate? So we want to be at least thinking about trying to build complete meals because it's very stabilizing to our blood sugar levels. And when our blood sugar levels are stable, our bodies are going to naturally kind of regulate weight. And that's why most people are kind of nervous about sugars in general, is they're worried about, is this going to make me gain weight? And that's common, what I'm usually hearing from a lot of the ladies I work with. And so a campfire meal, let's talk about what that means. Pretty silly. I know it's kind of goofy. But there's 3 components to your campfire meal. And the main one is the TP. And the TP is your structure. So the structure in comparison to your meal from the TP is your protein. And why do we need protein? Because we need it to repair. We need it to rebuild. It's also very satiating, meaning it helps us feel full. So that's one piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
Yeah, and so the next piece, which we didn't get a lot of in the SnackWell era, was we need a healthy fat. And a lot of us got so brainwashed and so kind of, oh my gosh, by that whole era of low fat, no fat, that there's still people struggling to get out of that. And healthy fat is so critical to our brain health, our overall health. We need essential fatty acids for our mood, our skin, our hair. That's what makes us beautiful as women, as human beings, And so the healthy fat in your campfire meal is the log on the fire. So just think, what does a log do? How does it burn? It's slow, right?
Yeah.
So
lasts a while.
Right, it lasts a long time, so it's a nice sustainable energy. And that's why I'm like, wow, we really need to be looking at our meals and saying, where's the protein? Where's the healthy fat? Because we want energy, but we also want energy that can sustain us throughout the day. And if we're really skimping on like having the salad and not having, like I'll have some of the ladies say, I'm just not going to have any dressing on it. And so I'm like, okay, well, what about some nice healthy olive oil? We need the fat, because fat, not only just like protein, gives us satiety as well. It makes us feel satisfied. It makes us feel full. Okay? And so then the last piece of building a complete meal is going to be your carbohydrates. And then, like right now, that's kind of a hot topic. Everybody's kind of like, we got to, there's a lot of anti-carbohydrate going on these days. But I have to keep reminding everybody, carbohydrates are vegetables and they're fruit and they're whole grains. And we need them, because in the campfire meal, I relate that to the campfire and the kindling that you put on your campfire. And and what's the kindling? It's like
gets it started.
Yeah, it gets it started. So it's like, it's that quick energy. So how great is it to have meals, if you're eating them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe some snacks in between, that actually are giving you sustainable energy, quick energy, structure. And the whole point of building meals this way is to balance your blood sugar. And when your blood sugar is balanced, you're not going to feel those cravings as much. And there's other reasons we crave, but I just want to, touch upon this first one is that we need to be building nutrient-dense meals that are complete meals. And that's a good place to start, is really asking yourself those questions. Am I building a campfire meal? Where's my protein? Where's my carbohydrate? Where's my fat? And of course, the key word's always quality, right? Eating those quality, whole, unprocessed foods.
Yeah, I was thinking like at McDonald's, you get proteins and you get fats and you get carbohydrates, but it's not going to be the ones that your body is really going to take with and feel balanced afterwards.
Yeah, good point. I mean, and that's why I say we have to use the Q word, quality. And so, what is that definition of whole foods? And so I like to say, ask yourself, did it walk, swim, fly, grow from the earth in its most natural state? So not altered by man. And I think you and I talked about this, Gracie, is that, hey, one of the things that I noticed after I went to nutrition school is that I really started spending less time in the middle aisles of the grocery store and more around the perimeter. And that's generally, I'm sure you've heard this before. This isn't rocket science. This isn't new. But I started to be like, whoa, I'm really not spending as much time in the middle of the supermarket as I do now on the exterior, where you're going to go to, if you're eating meats and fish, you have the meat and fish counter, and then you have your produce. And all these things, most of these foods, these whole foods, unprocessed foods, are more on the exterior, on the perimeter. So ask yourself, how much time do you spend in the middle of the supermarket, in the center aisles, compared to the perimeter? And that's a good way to gauge the quality of how you're building these campfire meals, which will help lead to stabilizing your blood sugars so that you can be in fat burning mode versus fat storage mode. Yeah.
So when you say fat burning mode, that means that your blood sugar is it's just in a place that when you do ingest, more sugar, you're not converting it to fat immediately, but instead you're using it as the fuel?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, when you are eating a food such as, whatever, we'll call it a bagel. We'll say a bagel, or if you like your sweet, your ice cream cone. So you consume that, right? And so your body, so that ends up being glucose, which is another word for sugar, in your blood. And so that's a normal, natural process. And then what the body says is, okay, well, we've got a lot of sugar in there. We're going to try and scoop some of that up and use it for energy. So it does that, and it produces insulin. And then, what ends up happening is that the cells get full because we're constantly having, like, here's an example of a blood sugar, kind of what I call the blood sugar roller coaster, where you eat breakfast and then you have the super big highs and then you crash after it and you have to keep coming up and down. So this is what it could look like. Here's a meal. You have, I don't know, name some breakfast cereal. Wheaties.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Okay, Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
You went way more healthy than I did.
Okay, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Wheaties, whatever you want, right? And then you have skim milk, and then you have some orange juice and coffee. Or maybe you just have coffee, right? How many people do that? Anybody on this call? So you have that breakfast. And so what the body says is, oh my gosh, that's actually full of sugars. Because if you look at that, where's the healthy fat? Where's the protein? Maybe there's a little bit of protein, but not much. It's mostly sugars there. And so what happens in your body is that your body's like, whoa, this is really stressful. I've got a ton of sugar coming in. So now you're in high blood sugar state. This means your body's producing more insulin. Anytime your body is in elevated insulin, you're going to be in fat storage mode. And that's also when your mood swings start to increase and your brain fog starts to go up. So immediately after that, your body's like, oh gosh, we got to bring the blood sugar back down to a nice stable level. But you know what ends up happening? It ends up pulling it way down to try and compensate for the huge sugar hit. So it goes really, really high, and then it'll pull it really low. So it'll pull you below that kind of that normal blood sugar level state that we want to be in. And when it pulls it low, that's when we have cortisol, which is your stress hormone goes up, your cravings go up, you start to get tired, right? Your brain fog is also elevated when it's low. And then guess what? Your body's like, oh my gosh, I got to get it back up. And I want to get it up as quickly as I can. So it's going to seek that quick kindling, right? The kindling, the quick burn. And so it's going to say, hey, I want it to be something super fast. So like a simple sugar such as your ice cream cone or a bagel versus like a whole grain, which is going to have fiber in it, which will slow down that spike. Your body will seek to try and rebalance as quickly as it can, but unfortunately we're kind of doing these super highs and super lows. And if you build a campfire meal, which could look like this, here's your breakfast. Maybe you have, maybe you eat eggs, and so you have some eggs and you have some spinach, and then you have maybe some fresh berries and some herbal tea. So you have some healthy protein and fat if you're buying a nice good quality egg. And then you have some carbohydrate from your fruit, and that's a campfire meal. So this doesn't cause the huge spikes that a very sugary meal like the cinnamon, what is it called?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you know it well.
Yes.
Skim milk, orange juice, and coffee. And so this meal, that has a balanced protein, fat, and carbohydrate quality foods will actually keep you in a nice, normal, balanced blood sugar level state. And when you're in this nice, balanced place in your body, your fat storage decreases. You're more likely to use fat as energy. Your moods will stabilize. Your energy will stabilize. Your cortisol, that stress hormone, drops. Your cravings drop. And guess what? We start to think a little more clearly. So this is how you want to start thinking, in your mind, how to start looking at your breakfast, lunch, and dinners if you're struggling with sugar cravings.
Yeah, well, I love all of that. I feel like it's really sensible, and I think it really it appeals to us because we know it makes sense. But it's it's a nice just reminder that we can't just subsist on being stressed out in the afternoon and walking to the coffee shop and getting the brownie and then eating it and then having the blood sugar spike and then getting home and feeling ravenous because we haven't had real food, and which stresses us out even more, which causes us to have the sugar craving. It's I think that I like having these touchstone habits that we can come back to of these ideas of obviously not a good campfire because I'm having this crazy brain fog and spiked blood sugar. So how do I get it back into balance? And I think that's a really good metaphor for it too. And I love it because it corresponds with Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is for those who aren't familiar with it, it's the sister science to yoga. So it's really looking at our body and our constitution and how it relates to the world around us. And one of the most important concepts in Ayurveda is the concept of digestion. And there's a word for it in Ayurveda. It's called Agni. And what Agni is it's like a fire that burns through our metabolism. And because everything is very holistically connected in Ayurveda, that we've learned that when we're in a stressful state, it's stressing out our digestion. And when we're not taking care of our digestion, it can also really like stress out our emotions as well. And actually the concept of Ayurveda is, because it's built on this fire, is sort of around like building a fire through kindling and making sure that it, like you're not overwhelming your fire, you're not underwhelming your fire, but instead you're just like really letting it burn steadily throughout the day in a way that it actually corresponds with the sun in Ayurveda too. So you're like in the morning, you're like kind of kindling it, and during the midday when you have like a lot of digestive power, you're giving it like a lot of fat, a lot of protein, and then towards the end of the day, you just, you go a little bit later in your meals and that can really start to help to regulate your food cravings too. And I found, because for me, like I was like reflecting on like my like childhood and high school eating habits, and Cinnamon Toast Crunch was like definitely a part of it. Like all the breakfast cereals were part of it. And I went through this one year, my mom is on the line, I think, so I don't know if you know this, but I would take my lunch money and I would buy, would sell these like chocolate chip cookies, these 3-packs for $1, and my best friend and I, we would get like 3 chocolate chip cookies and we'd eat that instead of our lunch every day for a year. And so it's really just got like, this whole thing that I wanted the sugar, and I would like make allowances, like, okay, because I thought a calorie was a calorie at the time. So it's like, if I just eat the sugar, that pretty much adds up to the calories that would have been in like, a piece of lasagna or something like that. But then hearing you, I'm like, but it doesn't add up the same way, that not every calorie is equal, because it's not just, how it enters our body, but it's what it does while it's in our body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so huge. Like food, when you talk about the calorie isn't a calorie, such an important piece of nutritional knowledge, meaning, where's the nutrient density? Because our bodies are really smart. They really want good quality nutrients coming in, because that's how we function optimally. And when we don't get it, guess what? Our bodies will keep seeking more and more food until we get it. And that, you could call that craving, right? And yeah, so you can call that craving. And so if we are working on did you hear what I said? Working on practicing. Because, hey, that's a lifelong thing, is to practice, eating, better quality foods most of the time. Because that's, we're not, our goal isn't to be a perfect eater. Nobody's is, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't want anybody to like go to Paris and not eat like a chocolate croissant. Like that would just be sad. Like we should all have the flexibility in our life that we can enjoy like the great things in life when they come to us. But I think there's such a difference in that and like the purple cupcakes from the grocery store, because we feel like that those purple cupcakes have power over us. And maybe that's what I'm hearing, and this is like finding that place where we have a really empowered relationship around sugar. It's not that it's just the sugar's not controlling us.
Yeah, and that's actually what I kind of learned about myself, was that I was really trying to fight sugar cravings personally, like trying to restrict. And heck, it just wasn't working, Gracie, like I still want it. In fact, I think it made me want it more. Because I couldn't have it, or I was telling myself I couldn't have it. And so I always like to say, hey, there's nothing that you can't have. And I totally agree with you. I'm not sure if Julie's on the call, because I can't see the list of people who are on today's call, but one of the gals that is in my current group just was in France. She was skiing in Chamonix. And by all means, the wine and the bread, right? You got to have it, because it's going to be amazing quality. It's part of the culture. It's part of the experience. And so that's pleasure too. We need sweetness in our life. And when we try and restrict it, Like I was trying to fight my sugar cravings, thinking I needed to do the 21-day sugar detox, trying to not have the ice cream cone. And then I said, wow, I really need to soften with this approach. And so the way I approached it, Gracie, was that, okay, I need sweetness in my life. And the sweetness doesn't just have to come from food, right? Like, what are the things that really are sweet to me? Like, I love being outside. I love being in the mountains or on the beach in the water or spending time with my dog and my husband. Like, there's some sweetness and really making sure that I'm cultivating that piece of my life. And and I know that like that's a powerful piece, like the sweet taste in Ayurveda.
Yeah, what I was just thinking about was, and so in Ayurveda we learned that there are 6 tastes in food, and just really briefly to just outline them in case you're interested. So it's sweet, salty, bitter, astringent, pungent, which is like spicy, and sour. And our culture is very heavy in sweet and salty. And what the sweet and salty tastes both do is they ground us, and they kind of put our feet back on the earth, which makes sense to me that we would crave these sweets when we're, really overwhelmed at work, or we're pushing ourselves too hard, or we're like in an emotionally crunchy situation. Because especially the sweet taste, it's like there's a reason that we like call people that we love honey, or sweetheart. It's like the sweet taste really opens up this like space of like acceptance and love. And I think we get that early on too. That like I was saying before, like the sweet kind of becomes this reward for us, and then so it all gets wrapped up in our mind that when we're not taking care of ourselves in some way, it can be really easy to want to go into that sweet taste, which is kind of like the alcohol too, right? Because that's just like a very highly concentrated sugar as well. That how do we? It's like almost like a little bit of escapism that we can go into and just take this little shortcut into what feels like this like more open, loving space. But through experience, we learn that like we don't get to stay in that space that long. What could really take us in that space would probably be a walk in the woods and some deep breaths, and or a nap, or that thing that we feel like we can't give ourselves in some way. So instead, we just try to take the shortcut with the sugar, but it doesn't work in that way.
Yeah, you're right. Like, that's why we're so drawn to it, because like the bread and the sugar and the wine or whatever it is, it does make us feel good. There's that dopamine and serotonin, like the feel-good neurotransmitters, to use kind of a technical geeky term. But the point is they make us feel good. And right, it makes us feel good for a short time period, and then then there's the shift where it's only a temporary piece. And so that's why it is important for us to look for sweetness in other places in our life. And that being said, what I did personally, Gracie, and what I like to teach my ladies is that find some good quality food sweetness to bring into your world. Like, I have some great recipes where I know that I love having some sweets in my weekly diet. And so, everybody's like, oh, dark chocolate. Okay, well, that's one, but there can be some really amazing things that you can make that are whole foods based sweets, like a chocolate avocado mousse recipe. And that's sweetened with, it's basically literally, I think it's like four or five ingredients. It's a banana, an avocado, some softened dates. That's the sweetener besides the banana. And then a little bit of cocoa, organic cocoa, and a drop of vanilla, and you put it in a blender. It's amazing. And so, I try and have a few of those go-tos in my recipe box, or if I make a special dinner. And that doesn't mean that I don't still go out and have my favorite ice cream cone here in Jackson, or have the dessert at dinner. Absolutely. Or the bread in France, or the wine. Totally. But I've learned to not have sugar cravings kind of overtake my brain by building these more balanced meals, making sure they're more nutrient dense, but also having the sweet taste still in my world and not restricting, and still allowing myself to have whatever it is I want. And then, one of the things that you touched upon too, Gracie, was the whole rhythm piece. And that's really kind of the last piece, was that when I was working as a personal trainer, I had no rhythm. And like you said, Gracie, like the one meal that I ended up kind of blowing off was lunch. And that's like the most critical meal of the day, because like you had, that's when our digestive fire is the highest, when the sun is highest in the sky. And I think a lot of times as human beings, we start to get a little disconnected from the fact that we are truly creatures of this planet, and that there are natural rhythms to, our wake cycle and when we eat and when digestive fire is highest. And then like that afternoon when we commonly feel a little bit less energetic, that's actually a natural rhythm of the earth. And then that's why we're our digestive fire starts to diminish as we go into the evening hours. And as you had mentioned in Ayurveda, it's really great to have a lighter, earlier dinner,
Mm-hmm.
And so if we start to really tap into, okay, your body loves having rhythm. It likes to know when it's going to be fed. So do you have a general time you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so that your body can relax, knowing it knows when the food is going to come in? Or maybe for some of us, between lunch and dinner is kind of a long period. And so maybe a snack is just what you need. My favorite snack, my go-to is walnuts and a green apple. I love it. And that's not what I'm always going to have, but, when I'm really working on trying to stabilize my blood sugars, because I am a self-professed sugaraholic. When I mentioned the purple cupcakes at the beginning of the call, I used to go to the supermarket, get the 6-pack of cupcakes, eat 5 of them, just mow them down, and throw the 6th one into the garbage can. And then I found myself digging it out like a couple hours later. I mean, that's yikes, right? But when I tell this story, Gracie, I have so many people chime in and say they have some, similar kind of, challenge that they've had. And so, I just wasn't nourishing myself well, mind and body. And once I learned to do that through eating better quality foods, less processed foods, eating more in a rhythm, and saying, no, I need to stop and have lunch. Like that's self-care.
Self-care. It's so simple. And it's something that you think about how many generations of people in our lineage or around the world are on an eating schedule because they have to be. Like when we were farming people, like we had to be on an eating schedule. And, the food was served, it was there, and then you went off and you worked. And then the next time you ate was like at a meal. It was like you didn't have time to think about it. But I think we're really overwhelmed with so many different options. Like I was walking downtown after I was teaching today, and I wasn't hungry. It was after my class. They just opened up like 3 new restaurants. I was like looking in the window and seeing people eating their food, and like saw there's a new coffee shop, and part of me was like, oh, I should go get a coffee, and I just kept having to be like, but I don't really want it, but it's when it's right there. It's like I look at my dog, and it doesn't matter if he's hungry or not. Like he will eat the food, and that we do have these like animal bodies that want things, But I think that's the great thing about being a human being is that we can look at what we're craving, and then we can also learn from our past experience and say, well, last time I did that, like it didn't feel that good, so I don't know if I want to do it again. And I've this one story I've told some people in the class before, but like I love Costco sheet cakes. Like I always have loved them. And I was photographing this birthday party for these little kids. It was last year, and they had this big Costco sheet cake, and it just, as soon as I got there, I was like, I'm going to have a piece of that cake. That's going to be my indulgence. And I started to eat it, and it didn't feel that good. And I ended up like throwing away half of the piece because it wasn't feeling that good. And I had gone from like feeling really good when I had gotten there because I'd had like a really good lunch with good fats and proteins. And then after eating this cake, I had this like I get a burning sensation these days when I eat like low quality sugar. And I had that burning sensation. And so what I did was like, I can beat myself up over this, or I can just, acknowledge that the experience has happened in my body, and then next time I can make a better decision. And when we get into that cycle where we're beating ourselves up over making a decision, I think that's when we can't really make change in that way, because we're not really just learning from ourselves. And so what I love about your story is that you're like, yeah, I did this, and I'm sure you didn't feel great after you ate 6 cupcakes, But then you learn from it, and you learned what you needed to do. So it's like if we do have a moment where we overindulge in the sugar, like I'd like to challenge everybody to like practice some compassion with themselves, because it will actually help you move forward in that way. And yeah.
Yes, I so agree. Is that kind of that softness that around, no matter what it is, we're eating, whether it's sugar or who knows, whatever the food is. And, just that taking a deep breath and just becoming more relaxed around food, and that self-judgment can be so stressful on the body. And, what's really interesting is like, the stress response is so powerful. And like you had mentioned at the beginning, Gracie, about that whole, the digestion and how it can get shut down when we're under stress response. And just, that negative self-talk, whether or not you're eating something that you are considering, quote unquote, a bad food, or, you could even go the opposite too. You could be eating really a great meal, but you're eating out of fear. And it's just something to kind of soften around food. And that's why I've really worked on saying there's nothing that I won't have. And like, I love that, I'm still going to go have a cupcake probably at some point at one of my friends' kid's birthday party, and it's probably going to have purple icing. That's okay, right? Like, that's okay. And I'm going to have, and people will sometimes, some of the ladies will say, hey, well, when are my sugar cravings going to go away? And I say, well, it's a piece it can always be there, because like you said, like sometimes you just walk by the coffee shop and you see the pastry and you're just like, oh, that looks good, right? Or maybe you're feeling really stressed, and you could be you could totally be doing the perfect little campfire meals and eating great quality and still want the cupcake. And it's okay.
Yeah, because what occurs to me in that is that like your physical body might not want that cupcake, but your emotional body might want that cupcake, because that's you've been trained that's the place where you can just rest in it. And like from a young age, like I used food emotionally, and my parents got divorced when I was younger, and those years were really tough for me. And I would come home from school and really hit the sweets hard, because I remember just feeling this like, again, that like love feeling of like, oh, I'm taken care of in this space. And those habits die hard, and you're like, you've had that bad day, you got the your boss made that weird comment to you, or you're feeling insecure about something, and it's just so easy to want to just escape into that feeling of sugar. It's like a little love affair in there, and it's hard to do the opposite. But I was just talking to someone a couple days ago, and we were talking about how we in our course we talk a lot about like shame resiliency, which means like when you're having a bad moment in your life and you're feeling that like icky shame response in your body, which no one likes to talk about it. We just kind of want to stuff that stuff down. And the way that a lot of us do stuff that stuff down is with like a donut and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But the only way that you can get past that is you have to reach out and share with someone else, with someone that you trust, and say like, I'm having a really bad day. Can I just like talk to you about this? And this person, she had done it in that moment, and she said that she like in that moment she didn't want to eat emotionally. That she like her food cravings had gone away because she did reach out and really reach out for connection. So I think like when we know that we're not hungry, and it's the metric I like to use is it's a quote by Janine Roth, and she says that being hungry is like being in love. If you're not sure, then you're probably not.
Yeah. Wow.
It's true. It's like those emotional food cravings can feel so strong for me sometimes. Of just like if I didn't use that metric. Of like, cause physical hunger feels different. Physical hunger is like your belly's rumbling. Any food sounds good. You need to eat. And then emotional hunger, it feels like, oh my God, like I want this so badly. And something is hungry, and I think it's important just to acknowledge that like something is hungry within you.
Mm-hmm.
But that whatever the food is, it's never going to satisfy that. And what you're probably hungry for is like connection, or giving yourself a break, or being kinder to yourself. And it's not easy to go into that stuff. I know that, and I know, and I will definitely at other points in my life choose the donut over dealing with that stuff, because that's real. But the more that I do it, the easier it gets, and the more that I don't have to confuse food with emotions. I can just enjoy the food and deal with the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, very powerful. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that, because the sugar, deep breath can be a challenging subject for a lot of us, and has been, like you said, since we were little and growing up and becoming teenagers. And then, here I am 45 years old, and I still love my banana oatmeal chocolate chip cookie. And that's great. And I've had to do a lot of self-exploration to get to where I am right now. And I still struggle. I'm still a human being. But it's like, that exploration where I've really, like you said, kind of noticing when I want that afternoon. Maybe I've eaten really great meals and great quality, but I still want the cookie, and acknowledging what is it that I'm hungering for, truly. And a lot of times it's because I was stressed, and I felt like that cookie was going to relax me, So, yeah, I mean, sugars.
Sugars, yeah. I'm wondering maybe people have some comments or questions. Do you want to take a couple questions?
Yeah, great.
Cool. So go ahead and push *6 and unmute yourself if you have anything that you're thinking about from the conversation that you want to share, or any questions for Tanya. I'll give everyone a moment here.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, this is Sonia. Hello?
Hi, Sonia.
Oh, good, I'm on the call. I couldn't tell. I just had a question because, you guys were talking, let's say you have the perfect breakfast with your eggs and the vegetables, which I do a lot, but there is something interesting in my case. Exactly then, after that good meal I can have a huge craving of something sweet, and that's in the morning already. And I don't know, I know we talked about one time maybe, water intake will help too without the craving. So if I maybe drink before and then have the breakfast, so I just wonder what your take is, and why do I have that craving after this good campfire meal breakfast?
So one of the things that I would probably suggest for you, Sonia, like actually what I love to do is add a little sweet to your breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like, how about a little, side of some fresh berries? Or, a little bit of apple, or, you know what I mean? Something where you actually do get that sweetness.
Oh, yeah, for whatever reason it's there. I see it, and then just, yeah.
Yeah, and I find myself, honestly, Sonia, some mornings I'm perfectly fine with, eggs and some veggies and some avocado. And then other days, I really want a little something sweet. So that's a little intuition, too, that your body's wanting something a little sweet. And then, do you like berries and apples or anything like that?
Yeah. And I was just trying to figure just the body, understanding why the body already early in the morning, I can understand in the afternoon or, that because you may be getting slow, you're tired, that you then get the craving. I just thought it's interesting that it hits you already in the morning.
Yeah, but just, I guess what I like to do is think, hey, like, you had your dinner, right? And then you finish eating, and then you have that whole night that you're fasting and your body's repairing and rebuilding, and it's using all this energy to kind of get you going for the next day. That, perhaps, I think it's really important for us to tune in and honor what our bodies are asking for.
I think, like you said, I like what you said in the beginning, instead of fighting it, because then nothing is going to work. So you just got to work with it and then make the right choices.
Yeah, so, test that out and see how you do with something a little sweet in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, good. No, I will. No, thanks for the advice.
Yeah, you bet.
I love that because it is. It's like you want sweet, give yourself sweets, but do it in a way that you're going to feel good about it afterwards, and that is going to be effective in that way. But sometimes it's just like we need to say it out loud before we can get it. So that's just what you need, and just trusting. I mean, I think we're taught a lot actually in our culture that not to trust our bodies or not to trust what we need or not to trust our cravings. But I think that if we go into them with awareness, we can see that they're actually really intelligent. Hi. Mm-hmm. Did somebody else unmute themselves here? Does anyone else want to ask a question? *6 or make a comment? Hello.
Hi. This is Sarah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. I have a question for you, Tanya, about, I'm just curious, in our course we've been talking about planning for our meals, and that's been kind of a barrier for me is I'll do really well, for one meal and trying to get that balance of the high quality fat and proteins and the whole grains for the, carbohydrates, but then it's oh my God, I have to do it all over again, the next day if I don't have leftovers. How do you, just out of curiosity, because I'm hearing different ways that different people in our group plan for their meal and how they strategically, do their shopping, how do you go about that to make it a little bit more streamlined for your week?
Yeah, thanks. That's great. Thanks, Sarah, for asking that question, because I think part of rhythm is planning, mm-hmm. And because we're busy women, a lot of times if we don't prepare, we get ourselves in trouble, right? I do, because what ends up happening, we end up going to get takeout. Right? Yeah. So one of my key strategies, and it takes practice, just like anything, Sarah, is meal planning. I actually sit down and I have my Sunday ritual. And my Sunday ritual is every Sunday after I finish breakfast, I sit my butt down and I pull out a piece of paper and I plan out my meals for the week. And, for some of my gals that I work with, I say, you know what, at least just get down the first couple days. So I'll do Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then some of us love to just go nuts and finish the whole week. It depends on your personality type, you know. Yeah. And so when I'm sitting there, it is always a great idea to make it as least complicated as possible. So meaning whatever you write down for dinner, if you like leftovers, because not everybody does, to make sure you're making extra at dinner. And as soon as you make dinner, actually take a portion and put it in a container so that you can have it for lunch the next day. Like right away. Yeah. Like as soon as you're making dinner, you make a little container, or maybe put it in the freezer for a couple days from now. If you're the kind of type who doesn't like to eat the same thing 2 days in a row, you know?
Oh, I don't mind that. If I can do that, it's great.
You do like it.
Yeah, no, I'll totally do that. I like what you're saying, though. It goes along nicely with what we've been talking about in our group, which is creating that ritual. And I think that's part of my resistance is I'm not used to having to dedicate so much time to it, but I just need to start, little by little, dedicating a little bit more time. And we also talked about having like days of the week be designated for different things, like, Mexican Monday or Pasta Tuesdays. And so just to have a little bit of a framework so it's not like, oh my gosh, every week I have to plan 7 full days of meals and I don't even have a starting point. So I think, I like your idea of maybe just doing the first few days and then the rest of the week will work itself out. And that might be a good starting point for me because my grocery store stuff is pretty much worked out. I go at the same time every week with my husband, and we always pick out, 1 or 2 meats and fish or beans, and so we have a little bit of an idea of what we're going to make, but usually only for like a couple meals, and the rest are staples that we have all the time, like yogurt and eggs and vegetables. So I think I like what you're saying, pulling out a piece of paper, writing it down, just kind of getting it out on paper, and then boom, you've got your plan and you go.
Yeah, and it does take practice, and like I have to put it on my reminder on my cell phone. I had to do it for a long time until it started becoming more of an unconscious versus a conscious habit, right? And so I used breakfast as my little trigger. Like, okay, it's Sunday, I just had breakfast, and this is my ritual for the week.
Yeah.
And another thing I like to do is like I said, maybe you just do the first couple days, Sarah, and then I always say to make it kind of fun and to perhaps try one new recipe like once a week or once every 2 weeks so that you can introduce something new and kind of know yourself. Like, is once a week too much? Or, you know what I mean? Like, or maybe you're just inspired that particular Sunday. And you're like, I'm going to do it this Sunday, or maybe I'll just wait till next Sunday and do it twice a month. And that way, you have some kind of fun, creative potential meal options for the week. And,
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Sarah. Thanks for the question.
Sure.
I really thank you for your question, Sarah. And Tanya, I like how you said just to try one new recipe a week, because I think that's that part of us that we sit down. I know it's for me. Like, I'm a little resistant to like pre-meal planning. Like, I'm pretty good once I go to the store and buy I buy my greens, I buy my root vegetables, I buy my grains. I do mostly like plant-based diet. I buy some high quality dairy, and then I get home and I start to make some meals out of it. And I think the thing that I don't like about pre-meal planning is that I feel like I have to like make a special meal every single time. But I'm realizing, listening to you, that like I don't. That what I need to do is just sort of like plan out like when certain things are going to happen, just to make sure that I have the ingredients that I need, and that I could just make one special new thing, which would expand my repertoire. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find when I write out my meal plan, Gracie and Sarah, is that it doesn't always happen. Like it's just giving me a plan. And so, I can switch things, days around, or maybe I go out to dinner. But I have to say, it really calms my nervous system to have some sort of plan, even if it's just for a couple days. So I kind of feel like that's a way of taking care of myself and really nourishing myself by not having to be frantically trying to figure out what to make at the last second. But that's kind of knowing myself and my personality type. But like I said, I'm inviting you to try it and realize that, hey, don't be attached to it. But it does help. It's going to put you in a better position where you're more likely to eat in a rhythm and have good balanced meals, and to be able to regulate your blood sugar and thus those pesky sugar cravings that we all will have.
Yeah. It's like you never want to be. For me, I never want to be like trying to decide what I'm eating when I'm already hungry. Like,
oh yeah, trouble, right?
Totally trouble, because it's true. Because I get really hungry and I want sweets. That's the thing, because I'm hungry and my blood sugar starts to crave that sweet. And if I have like a piece of fruit or something, it's okay. But if there, is dark chocolate in the fridge, and that, as I'm cooking, like eating squares of dark chocolate is not really how I want to enjoy my sweets. Like I do have dessert, even though it's actually kind of shifting, that I'm not craving it as much now as I used to. But I like to like sit down and have my lunch, and like then, in a nice little dish, like put out whatever I'm having for dessert and chew it and be mindful. And so it's like my ideal is never to be like cramming something into my mouth as I'm cooking, because I'm not really enjoying it in that case. But that's the kind of stuff I do when I'm hungry and food is not ready. So I like to cook in the morning. When I'm getting up in the morning, I drink some hot water in the morning and just take a moment to get everything organized in my head and put my dishes away from the night before. And that's when if I'm making something in the oven, I'll start to preheat the oven. If I'm making smoothies for the day, I'll just start to put stuff in my Vitamix, or I'll chop up vegetables, and that makes me feel so much more grounded, just to know that it's already kind of started or prepped or even cooked all the way if I'm making soup or something like that, and then I just reheat it later for lunch. So I think it's just, and then someone else in the class that she found that the morning is when she really likes to meditate and do yoga, so she's starting to do her cooking the night before when she's not hungry. And she makes like a milk drink for herself, so she has a little something to sip on as she's cooking, and that's becoming her night ritual. And then the next day the cooking's already done. So if cooking your meal right before you're eating is causing you to have, cravings, or you say like, forget it, let's just, go out for pizza or whatever, then maybe another habit to look at is like when you're cooking and how to make that work for you a little bit better.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you do your cooking in the morning, Gracie, and that clearly works awesome for you. And I find myself kind of drawn to use my slow cooker a lot, for kind of that same reason, where I'll get things going, throw it on the pot, and like, how awesome is that to come home to at the end of the day when you're tired, you're grumpy, I could use the B word, bitchy, whatever, you get kind of grumpy and irritable and tired. And especially with women, we're usually the ones, not always, I have some ladies that I work with, their husbands cook, but usually we're responsible. And so if we can have that just kind of, this yummy aroma and this delicious food, that's already prepared, that we can actually sit down and relax to at the end of the day. So there's just some cool little strategies, and I love how you do yours in the morning. I like to do some slow cooker meals that I'll, have for leftovers the next day. Or, as you had said, one of your other gals does a nightly ritual. So all of our rituals are going to be a little bit different, and we need to kind of explore and see what works best in our current world, in our own reality, because everybody's experience is different. And so we just have to own that.
Mm-hmm. And make it work for us, and we can tell if it's working or not because we feel good about it. And if there's something, and I think that's what you were saying before, that what wasn't working for you about the, eating the cookie for the cupcakes was that you didn't feel like you were at your healthiest because you knew what healthy was, and you knew that you weren't there, and that was just a habit that you were in. And so it's like, look, can we not let anyone else tell us what's healthy for us, but instead really figure out that experience from the inside of our own life, and like we know when we're not in integrity, and that's why a lot of us have signed up to do this work, is because we knew we weren't in integrity, and now we're starting to feel what it is to really get in integrity with our eating. And for me, it's stress relief to be in integrity, because I don't have to spend so much energy beating myself up or worrying about what not being integrity is doing to my life. So
yeah,
it's hard, but that's why we're here together. We're working on all this together.
Right, we're not alone. We all have similar but different experiences, but that just talking about it is just like, it relaxes me.
It does, because we're sharing, we're practicing of our vulnerability with each other, which hopefully we won't want to get off the line and go have dessert right now, or if you're going to have it, enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up over it.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah.
Well, maybe we're done. Or if you do have something else you want to say or comment you want to make, then push *6 now. All right. So I think that has really been wonderful. I know I'm inspired. Thank you so much to Tanya and to your group and to my group, everyone who's been on the line, and for holding the attention here. And I hope this conversation helps you the next time that you're feeling a sugar craving, that you can know that we're all working on this together, and just to think about how to really make your campfire meals, how to give yourself more regularity, how to practice reaching out for connection when that's what you need instead of sugar. Any last words, Tanya?
It just was a sweet conversation. So thank you for having me in sharing the conversation with your group as well.
You're so welcome. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute the line so we can all say good night, and we'll connecting soon. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Love you.
That was it. Only one more minute.